I always loved the name, and the midwife always used to come in when he was little. He used to like grunt and she'd go, "How's the little bear? How's the little bear?"
It's cute.
And it like stuck.
Simon Cowell's night took an unexpected turn when he noticed a vulnerable little traveler who shared his bus ride home. What he did next will melt your heart. Simon Cowell was just on his way back home after assessing wonderful talents in the America Got Talent show. He exhaled deeply, glad that the tension-filled talent show was finally concluded as he looked forward to having a pleasant evening. His appearance bore that of one who was extremely tired from too much work. He looked on, his eyes scanning his environment gently. He noticed how the city bus passed on, shedding radiant lights on the environment. He got carried away on how peaceful the environment was, and he felt something refreshing bubble up in him. He realized how engrossed he had been in work lately, and he resolved to experience what it meant to be a regular human just for a little while. His eyes caught a city bus, and the urge to ride on one of it rather than his exotic cars overwhelmed him, and he immediately boarded a city bus. Little did he know that his decision would help a little traveler who felt lost and alone. On boarding the bus, Cowell took a seat at the farthest corner of the bus. He was trying to conceal his identity, and he didn't want paparazzi taking pictures of him. The atmosphere in the bus was calm, and immediately Cowell felt a refreshing sensation hit him. This is life, he thought, his gaze following the many lights that radiated on the streets, and his whole being relaxed. His mind was preoccupied with the many young contestants he had accessed during the day, and he was overwhelmed with their exceptional talents. He immediately scanned the commuters in the bus, and he realized that there weren't many people who boarded the bus, and he felt at ease. However, he noticed something strange. Seated at his left was a little girl not more than 5. Her eyes looked distant, and her hand held onto something he couldn't visualize at the time being. She looked alone, vulnerable, and scared. Suddenly, the little girl turned to him, and their gaze interlocked, and he noticed how sad her eyes were. She, however, shifted her gaze to the window, looking outside and murmuring soft words to herself. Cowell was perplexed at first, wasn't certain of what a little girl would be doing on a bus alone and at an odd hour. He, however, flew those thoughts off his head and assured himself that her parents were somewhere in the bus, and he relaxed once more. However, he noticed how the little girl shifted on her seat uneasily, and how her eyes darted around looking for something or someone. She kept murmuring words to herself, words that Cowell couldn't catch on. His protective instinct, however, kicked in, and he decided to speak to the girl so he could find the whereabouts of her parents. The little girl wasn't expecting the little tap on her shoulder as she shook in fright. She wasn't expecting anyone to talk to her or notice her presence in the bus. So, when Cowell tapped on her shoulder gently, she was immediately taken aback. Cowell noticed the forlorn look on the little girl's eyes, and he finally got a better look of what the little girl was holding tightly. It was a teddy bear. She held it tightly to her chest, trying to derive comfort from the fluffy toy. Cowell, being the kind man that he is, noticed something wasn't right with the little lad, and he asked her in the most gentle and soft voice he could muster. "Hi, my name is Cowell. What's yours?" he asked, looking at the little girl, trying to give her a form of reassurance with his soft voice and gentle gaze. The little girl was skeptical at first. She looked at Cowell, trying to decipher if the man who was trying to strike a conversation with her was genuine. She must have been moved by his soft tune as she answered in a little voice. "My name is Matilda," she said, trying to stop a sob. Her mouth trembled slightly as she tried to steady her voice. "I want to go home," she said in a whisper. She held onto her teddy tightly. Her eyes filled with tears she tried her hardest to constrain. Simon Cowell was immediately moved by the vulnerable nature of the girl. Her face was pale due to the cold, her hands white and trembling. Her lips were chapped, and the happiness a 5-year-old needed to possess seems to have eluded her. He was now certain she was alone, and the urge to protect this young girl enveloped him. The bus was slowly dropping off commuters who had boarded the bus, and soon only Cowell and the little Matilda remained. His heart sank as realization hit him. He knew she was alone earlier on, but the realization was so disheartening. He noticed the defeated and dejected look on the little girl's face, and he realized he had to do something. He had seen many youngsters in his talent shows, and he saw how lively and happy they looked. He saw the hopes in their eyes each time they wanted to perform. But Matilda's eyes looked different, distant and teary. But Matilda's eyes looked different, distant and teary. He decided to look for a clue on how to help the little girl, and he knew he had to ask her of her parents. He got down on his knees, holding her hands gently while he asked for her parents. "Where's your home?" he asked first, trying to make her talk. She looked scared and didn't want to answer the question. Cowell reassured her that he was only trying to help. She replied, this time with a more steady voice, still refusing to match his gaze with hers. "It's at Ranch Street, 620 Austin," she said in a very soft whisper. Cowell realized that her house was at the rural axis of Texas, and he was surprised how she found her way to the city. He, however, didn't raise any alarm because he didn't want the little girl to be scared. He kept it cool and asked after her parents. "What about Mom and Dad?" he asked, choosing his words carefully because he didn't want to trigger any emotions. He noticed how dark her gaze turned, and he knew something wasn't right. She replied this time with a teary voice. "Mom is sick, and Dad died." Her voice was weak, and Cowell knew how heavy her heart was. He understood she was going through pains, and it hurt him more because he didn't know what to do at the moment. The bus jerked and stopped abruptly, disturbing the talk between Cowell and Matilda. The driver informed them they were at the last bus stop. The driver, however, noticed the forlorn faces of both Matilda and Cowell, and he immediately asked what the problem was. Cowell explained everything to the old driver. He told of how the young girl was lost. The old driver was moved by the story of the young girl, and he suggested something. "Why don't we inform the police?" he asked immediately. "I can place a call across I think they'd be able to help," he said, beaming with smiles, for he knew his suggestion was valid. Cowell's face immediately lit up. Yes, he thought aloud. That's exactly what they were going to do. The cops were going to fix the maze and take young Matilda home. Matilda was happy, her face showing her first smile since the day began. She was finally going to see her mother. "Thank you, sir," she said, thanking the driver profusely. "Thank you, Uncle Cowell," she echoed shyly, thanking Simon Cowell wholeheartedly. The atmosphere in the bus immediately changed. Sadness was finally left out. Everyone was happy. Cowell's face showed so much joy for the little girl, was finally going to reunite with her mom. Matilda was the happiest. She was jumping around the bus in complete joy and ecstasy. Cowell couldn't believe that it was the same girl who looked dejected earlier, was now the one jumping, clapping, screaming, and dancing in complete glee and joy. Family reunion can, however, be the best thing that can happen to a little child, and Cowell was certain to make that happen. The driver immediately placed a call to the regional police department, reporting the case of a missing child who was left in the care of Cowell. The police asked for the girl's description, which Cowell immediately offered. "She's little," he began. "Her hair is dark, and she's not more than 5 years old. She has a teddy with her and a little backpack," he concluded. The police promised to be there in no time, as they were certain to take the little girl home. The wait for the police officers was peaceful. Noises in the streets seemed to die down, and everywhere was quiet. Cowell looked at the little girl and noticed she was quiet as well. He asked what was going on in her mind. She replied slowly, "I just want my mama to be well. Life was more colorful when she was..." Cowell was moved, and he promised her that her mom was going to be all right. He told her not to lose hope, as everything will certainly fall in place. Matilda was at peace, and she told Cowell so. In a soft voice, she told of how wanted to look for her aunt in the city. That might help her mom with money for her treatments. Cowell's eyes welled up a little. He realized this little girl was just trying to save her mom, and he decided to do the unexpected. The cops, however, came around. They were to see Cowell with a little girl, and they greeted him respectfully. They greeted the driver, and with a warm gaze, one of the cops got on his knees, holding the little girl's hands gently and assuring her softly. "We would get you home," he started. He noticed the extra light in the girl's eyes, and he continued. "We would take you to Mama. You will finally see your mom once more," he added, smiling and squeezing her hands softly. Matilda was happy as she nodded her head repeatedly and held on to Cowell's hands. The drive home was peaceful and easygoing. The smiles on the little girl's face was unmatched, Her high-keyed voice sang nursery rhymes she learnt in school, her hands tapping on Cowell's arms gently, trying to create a kind of melody to go with her rhymes. Her eyes shone with something pure and refreshing. It was happiness. Cowell could not help it either. Her happiness caught on him too. Her happiness was contagious. Everyone in the vehicle started singing nursery rhymes too, with complete abandonment and happiness. And Cowell noticed that just like other children that came to the talents shows he had anchored, this little girl had her own unique talent. She had the ability to make others carefree and happy. He noticed how her presence in the vehicle lightened up the mood of the commuters, and he resolved to help the little girl. Finally, Cowell and the cops arrived at Matilda's home. Cowell noticed how dilapidated her home looked. He was certain that the environment wasn't the safe and right place for a young child to grow. He looked around and noticed how abandoned houses arrayed the whole surrounding, with broken bottles scattered around. He was left in shock when he noticed how the interior of her home was. Their windows were broken and the room was cold, as he was certain the heater in the room was spoiled. How can a young child grow in such an environment? His thoughts were, however, cut short when he heard a little scream from Matilda. "Mama," she echoed, running frantically to meet her bedridden mother. Her mom's eyes immediately teared up. "Matilda," she called out, trying her best to seat up. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice trailing off and her hands shaking. Matilda immediately told her mom of how she went to look for her aunt. Her mom's eyes were filled with tears, and she reprimanded Matilda softly. "You can't go off alone looking for anyone. You are too young for that. You left me worried," she said, not noticing the presence of Cowell and the cops in the room. Cowell allowed the mother and daughter reunion to continue. He was moved by how happy they both looked, and he was delighted he helped when he did. Matilda apologized to her mom and explained she was sick of seeing her mom fall sick every day. Her mom was moved and told Matilda that she would get better eventually. Cowell, however, interrupted the happy reunion and introduced himself to Matilda's mom. "Hi, my name's Simon Cowell, and I'm pleased to meet you." Matilda's mom shook his outstretched hand and smiled softly. She appreciated Cowell for looking after her daughter. She told of how she had been bedridden for almost a year, and fending for herself and that of her daughter was hard. Cowell understood, and he promised to do the extraordinary. He first of all told Matilda's mom of how wonderful her child was, and complimented her on raising her child well. Then, he went ahead to encourage Matilda's mom. He assured her of quick recovery. He also contacted his doctor friend and entrusted the care of Matilda's mom to him. He paid for a new home for them, a home that was in a more comfortable environment. He was certain with a new home, Matilda and her mom would live a comfortable life. He also offered to enroll Matilda in a very prestigious school. Matilda's mom was moved to tears, her heart racing with so much happiness and appreciation. She looked at Cowell and thanked him profusely. "Thank you, Mr. Cowell," she said with a soft voice. "Thank you for your help and kindness. It's rare to find someone like you in our world of today," she said, beaming happily. She remembered the time her husband died, and she was left with the responsibility of fending for herself and Matilda. Tears ran down her cheeks as she knew everything was finally over. She was glad. Finally, she could live a normal life. Matilda was speechless. She was finally going to school, and life would finally be bearable, all thanks to Simon Cowell. What are your thoughts on this seamless kindness of Simon Cowell? Do you think his helping the young girl was worthwhile? Leave your thoughts with us in the comment section, and remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the next video on your screen and you will enjoy it.